Hi, welcome back to my channel, Beautiful Minutia. If you're new here, my name is Tiffany and welcome to the second day of the 12 days of Christmas. I am not giving you 2 turtle doves today. Instead, I am giving you my classics TBR for 2024, which is arguably one of the most anticipated videos on my channel because I've developed a bit of a reputation as a lover of classics here on BookTube. And I think people are always curious what my plans are for the following year. So this is structured just a tiny bit differently this year because if you saw my goals video yesterday, I'm trying to schedule like kind of less buddy reads on top of books that I also want to read because I had a lot of trouble getting to books that I wanted to read, which is really a very common problem for me. That happens pretty much every year. So what I'm doing is I have a book chosen for each month. And so if you want to jump in and read those with me, you absolutely can. And you can let me know if you're interested in any of them. But these books are being read in the months that they're designated because I already have readathons and things that I'm planning and things that are going on. And so I've purposely chosen shorter books during months that I have a heavier load of books that I'm reading and longer books when I know that I don't have as much scheduled in those months, at least not yet. So there is a method to the madness here. I also kept my list to 12 books this year, and that never happens. I'm always like, well, I at least have to add one more in, you know? And so I did not do that this year. I also last year did like classics around the world, and I tried to pick from a lot of different countries, and I didn't do that this year because there are so many books on my shelf that I really, really want to read and have been sitting there for a long time. And so I just picked what I really, really wanted to read. I have a lot of other classics planned throughout the year with my Patreon, with buddy reads I have scheduled, but these don't fall into that category at all. But I do have a couple larger books that I'm spreading out over several months that I do want to make you aware of that aren't officially part of this classics TBR, but if you want to jump into some of them that are read-alongs, you absolutely can. If you're on my Patreon, you already know this, but we are buddy reading or rereading, for most of us, I think, the Lord of the Rings trilogy. So we're starting with Fellowship of the Ring in January, The Two Towers in February, and Return of the King in March. So if you're interested in joining us for that, that is totally available for you. All tiers are able to participate in buddy reads because I want to read with as many of you as possible, and it's just so fun. And I'm really looking forward to rereading this series. It's my most reread books ever. But it's been a really long time since I've read them. So I am long overdue for a reread, and I'm really excited to read that one. And then also during the summer, there's a group of ladies that every summer they choose a really big classic to read over the course of the summer. So they have invited me as a co-host this year, and we will be reading The Tale of Genji, which is a Japanese classic, which is really interesting. I haven't read any Japanese classics before. So this, I think, is considered like the first novel, and it is huge. Like, it's over 1,000 pages, I think. So I don't know what to expect with this one at all. I don't know what it's about, but I'm really excited to read this one. So keep it on your radar for this summer if this was one that you have been interested in as well, because I'm sure we'll have live discussions to chat about it. And one more big book that is a buddy read that I've planned, it's not a read along. With my friend Dia from Novel Idea, we're going to be reading Kristen Lavrenstatter, which is 3 novels in this one volume. And we will be reading this over October, November, and December. So those are the big books that I have spread out over multiple months. And there are some larger books in this stack, but not like these ones that are like over 1,000 pages. So let's dive into my actual official TBR. So for the month of January, the book that I have chosen is The Violent Buried Away by Flannery O'Connor. The past couple of years, I have been a co-host of an event called Flannery O January, and we could not make that happen this year. Pretty much all of the co-hosts were just really busy, and we just couldn't really get together to try to do lives or a group read or anything like that. But I want to celebrate Flannery O January in my heart still. So I'm reading this with my friend Christy Lewis from Dostoevsky in Space, who actually gifted me this for my birthday, which is so exciting. And we read Wise Blood last year, which is Flannery O'Connor's first novel. This is her second and final novel that she wrote before she passed away. And I'm really excited to read this one. I've read a lot of her short stories. and her first novel, so I'm really excited to read this one. Noah from Everyone Who Reads It Must Converse says that this is just like a masterpiece of her writing, and pretty much everything I've read of hers feels like a masterpiece. It's so good. She's such an amazing writer, but I'm really excited to read this one. With February comes the return of Feb Regency, which is an event reading books that were published in the Regency era. So for this one, I have been saving this book up. I purchased it because Christy Lewis read this book last year for Feb Regency, and I don't know if you can really see it because it's on the spine and it's kind of a little worn, but it's The Vicar of Wakefield by Oliver Goldsmith. When I ordered this used online, I had no idea that I was going to get this beautiful antique version of this book. It's so lovely and it smells phenomenal. So this is what I'm going to be reading in February. An event that I love in March is March of the Mammoths, and that is just to read a book that it would be considered a mammoth, which I think is over 500 pages. And so I am buddy reading this with Sandy from Miss Reads a Lot. We are reading Daniel Deronda by George Eliot, and I really like George Eliot a lot. I've only read 2 of her works so far, and I kind of want to try to read a book of hers every single year. So Daniel Deronda will be the book that I try this year. April has another really big book on it, and it's one that is actually intimidating to me. So every year I try to choose a book that I've either tried to read before and have DNF'd, or just like scares me a little bit. So in 2023, I had several books on that list: Don Quixote and Middlemarch, and the year before I had War and Peace, and the year before that I had Les Miserables. And so this year I have Moby Dick on there, which I did try to read in 2023, but when I was trying to read it with some other people, I was like very overscheduled, so I only read the first chapter or 2. And I've had a lot of people tell me in recent days that they actually really loved Moby Dick, and they didn't find it to be boring or bad, and that's kind of the reputation that it has all these chapters on whales and whaling and incorrect information, even though it was like information that I'm pretty sure was considered correct scientifically at the time. But there's a lot of controversy about that. But I am really interested and intrigued in it, but also really nervous about it just because of the reputation that it has. This is one that I'm not really sure if I can finish in a month. I feel the same way about Daniel Deronda, but I'm gonna try to finish Daniel Deronda in a month. This one, I'm gonna be more gracious with myself and extend over into May if I want to, or if I feel like I need to. But I did still choose a book for May, and this one is much shorter. I think it's gonna be an easy read and very kind of like lighthearted and probably kind of a little bit fluffy feeling, and that's The Keeper of the Bees by Jean Stratton Porter. I have read multiple times and really love The Girl of the Limberlost, which is probably her more famous book, and there's another book that comes before that called Freckles that has some of the same characters, and I've been wanting to read that one, but I don't own that one, and I do own The Keeper of the Bees, and I've been wanting to read more by her because I've only ever read Girl of the Limberlost, and I just love her nature writing. I think it's just gorgeous. I think she sets a scene so well. And the cover of this, does that not feel spring going into summer for you? Because it really does for me. If you know me well at this point, you're like, huh, this is weird. There are no Russian classics on this list so far. Never fear. In June, I have Dead Souls by Nikolai Gogol. I read my first Gogol short story in 2023, kind of in response to reading Poor Folk by Dostoevsky, because Poor Folk was inspired by a Gogol short story, The Overcoat, and I really, really enjoyed it. I love Gogol's humor in his writing, so I think that this is going to be less intense and potentially less philosophical than a Dostoevsky or a Tolstoy. But we'll see. I did have some trouble deciding on some of the books in this list because there were a couple of things where I'm like, I know I want to read this author, but I'm not sure which book of theirs I want to read. And one of those authors was Joseph Conrad. So in the month of July, I wanted to read a Conrad, and I put 3 choices on a poll on Instagram, and the choice that won is The Secret Agent by Joseph Conrad. This is another book that Christy Lewis talked about, and I was just like, oh my gosh, I want to read that. And I don't even remember like really what she said about it, except that it is about espionage. but I just knew, like, when she was talking about it, it sounded really interesting and she loved it, and our tastes align quite frequently. And in 2023, I was introduced to Joseph Conrad and read 2 of his works, so I'm really excited to be reading another one of his. Another one of the polls was for John Steinbeck, and I had Cannery Row and The Grapes of Wrath on there, and I shouldn't have been surprised at all that The Grapes of Wrath won, because it is more well known. So I think because of that, it has been read more frequently, and so that would make sense that more people would recommend it. I actually have read this. I read it in high school, but I don't remember very much about it except that I think it takes place during the Dust Bowl, but it's about a family, I think, that's traveling west hoping for more opportunity and a better life. And I think that there's some family tensions in there, but like, I couldn't tell you what they were. I couldn't tell you any of the hardships that they experience. I'm sure that there are some because it's Steinbeck. I couldn't tell you a single character's name. So I really don't remember very much about it at all in comparison with some of the other Steinbecks that I've read either in more recent days, or like East of Eden. I've read that like 3 or 4 times, and I only read Grapes of Wrath once. So this will be my Steinbeck for the year. It'll probably almost feel like I'm reading it for the first time because it's been such a long time. September is my birthday month, and so I wanted to choose something that was gonna make me happy. So I decided to choose The Blue Castle by Ellen Montgomery. I know for a lot of people, this is their favorite of her works because they love the journey and growth that the main character goes on and kind of like finding herself. This is a standalone written for adults, I'm pretty sure, with an adult protagonist, as opposed to a lot of her other works that feature child protagonists. So I am super curious about this one because so many people love it. So many people have recommended it to me. It was actually gifted to me by my friend Victoria. So I'm so excited to be putting this on my TBR and reading it. And I think September is gonna be perfect. October brings the return of Victober, which is a month that we celebrate by reading Victorian literature. And I did choose a Victorian book for this, but I didn't want to choose one that was like long or heavy because I already have like 3 buddy reads scheduled in the month of October. And so I wanted to choose something shorter and something that was like very different from the other books that I had chosen. Ironically, actually, both November and December are Victorian works of literature too, and they are longer, kind of more traditionally what you'd think of for Victorian literature. But in October, I decided not to do that. I chose a book that I picked up semi-recently because it is like the weirdest thing I've ever seen. And I am fully anticipating being very entertained by this. It's a sci-fi by H.G. Wells, and it's called The Food of the Gods. Look at this cover. This is like the weirdest cover ever, and it's about these scientists, and they have this, I don't know, sort of substance that they give to animals, and it makes these animals huge. So it says on the back that a baby chick becomes as large as a buzzard, and rats grow bigger than horses. But then it says that things really began to get out of hand when the food started being fed to babies. And I was just like, oh my gosh, I need to read this. November tends to be a month that my reading slows down, and I have noticed that over the past several years, and I don't know why that is. So I'm choosing a book that I'm really excited about for the month of November. It is a Victorian classic. It is a bit on the longer side, but it's around 500 pages, so it's not like it's gigantic or anything like that. But it is a Bronte. It's The Tenant of Wildfell Hall by Anne Bronte, and I read Agnes Grey in 2023 and absolutely just loved it, raved about it, had so many of you in the comments saying like, oh my gosh, I have to read this book, which that's how I know that I'm really excited about a book, if I am selling it so well that people are telling me I bought this book because you talked about it and I have to read it. I'm like, wow, okay, good, because I really think people should read Agnes Grey. But I had quite a few people tell me that The Tenant of Wildfell Hall is better, like a lot better. And I don't know how that can be because I loved Agnes Grey so much. But I'm really excited to give this one a try and kind of compare the two, see which one I like more. I love Anne Bronte's writing, so I feel like more time with her writing couldn't be anything but good, right? So Lastly, in the month of December, this is another one that I put up a poll for. I have for quite a few years now, every year, read one new Dickens and reread an old one. And you'll notice that there has not been a Dickens on this list so far. I actually already am planning to buddy read The Pickwick Papers with Penny in January, and that will be my new Dickens. So for a reread, I was having a trouble deciding which one I wanted, so I put up Little Dorrit and David Copperfield. And I actually read Little Dorrit probably 8 years ago, I think, but David Copperfield's been longer. I think that was in high school when I read David Copperfield. So David Copperfield's the one that won, and I'm actually thrilled about that because it's been much longer since I've read that one, and I'm really looking forward to rereading it. Something about December just screams Dickens to me. I don't know if it's like the cozy season. I don't know if it's because A Christmas Carol is always associated with Dickens. I'm not really sure which one it is, but December feels like a perfect time to read Dickens, so I will be rereading David Copperfield in the month of December. Well, that is my classics TBR for the year of 2024, and I'm really proud of myself for basically keeping this to 12 books. I already have tons of plans for like lots of other buddy reads and lots of other classics that I already have in the works, scheduled out for a lot of the year, actually. So if there are any books on this list you would like to hop in on and you're available in the month that I'm going to be reading it, just let me know, because I am totally open to buddy reads for these books that I have already scheduled, because it's not like I'm scheduling in an additional buddy read. I'm already reading these books. And it's really fun to be able to talk with you guys about it. So let me know if there's any of these that jump out to you that you would like to jump in on. And also let me know if there's any specific plans that you have for the year with any classics, if there's an author that you were just itching to try, or maybe there's an author that you want to read one of their books every single year or something like that, or whatever. Just let me know if there's any specific classics that you're really excited about reading. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked this video, please hit like and also subscribe so you can continue to see more bookish content from me, and I will see you again next time.